May I now request Rotarian Anar Shah to kindly introduce our guest speaker, Jayaji.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. It is a great pleasure and privilege to introduce today's speaker, Jaya Row ji. Jaya Row is a renowned and influential speaker on Indian philosophy and Vedanta, as well as a well-respected spiritual leader whose expositions are both uplifting and inspiring. Backed by her corporate experience and 40 years of study of Vedanta, she has motivated audiences from different walks of life from all over the world to lead happier and more successful lives. I've had the privilege of studying the Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta under her guidance for the past decade, and from personal experience can say it has been a most enriching and fulfilling journey. Thank you, Jayaji, for accepting our invitation. Over to you.
Thank you, Anar. And thank you, Mr. Mehta and the Rotarians for inviting me to your meeting here today. The subject you've selected is a very interesting one. It talks about fate, free will, and their interaction. So, human suffering is one of life's most confusing dilemmas. We often feel, why does one person have to go through so many problems in life and another person seems to just sail through life? Why is one person born with a silver spoon in the mouth and another person going through problems without seeming to deserve it? Fortunately for us, our ancient forefathers collected data on this subject, connected seemingly unconnected facts, and discovered the law of karma. The law of karma is pretty much like the law of gravity. It applies to everybody, whether you know it or not, accept it or not, it applies. And so it would be in our well-being to learn what it is, abide by it, and benefit from it. The millennial concept, the modern concept is do what you want and forget about the future. But it doesn't quite work that way. It's like throwing a stone in water and expecting that there will be no ripples. So the law of karma simply means action. Action is the pivot around which life revolves. When you act more driven by greed, selfishness, and negativity, you are planting seeds of suffering for yourself. The same you driven by generosity, positivity, you create a future that is wonderful for yourself. So let's start with what is the source of action. The source of action, when, let's say, in a family over the weekend, the father goes to, not nowadays, but in normal circumstances, the father goes to play golf, the son goes to play football, the daughter decides to hang out with friends, and the mother decides to watch a movie on Netflix. Why are different people doing different things? Because they have a desire to do that particular thing. Where does the desire come from? Because at some point in time you thought of it. Golf, football, friends, or a movie. Now the interesting question is, why did the thought come to you? Because you have, Vedanta says, a vasana for it. Vasana is a Sanskrit word which literally means fragrance, but to understand what it is a deep-rooted yearning, interest for a particular thing, unmanifest desire. So when you have a vasana for music, an interest in music, a leaning towards music, you think of music, you develop a desire to listen to music or to sing yourself or learn music. and it results in the action. So as the vasana, so will be your thought, desire, and action. But not just that, also your circumstance. So you find that a stockbroker hangs around with other stockbrokers. A doctor is in his own world, the medical world of hospitals and doctors and patients. An architect is with fellow architects, and so on and so forth. Now, the interesting thing is, at this moment, you are a victim of your vasanas. You can't change them. And this is referred to as destiny. So you find that all beings act according to their vasanas. A cow is mild, a lion is ferocious, a deer is agile, an elephant is slow. They can't change. But when it comes to human beings, you find that the human being has the power to bring about tremendous change in their lives. We've heard of a dacoit who became one of the Saptarishis, Vishwamitra. There is a story of a beggar in Orissa who started a school. The rich can become paupers and vice versa. I just read about a brilliant judge, Justice Radha Binod Pal, unknown in India, but famous in Japan because and he helped a lot of war criminals from escaping the death penalty by his fantastic judgment, which was written in something like thousands of pages. But his life started as in East Bengal, what is now Bangladesh, as grazing a cow. So his mother, they were in abject poverty. His mother owned a cow and he would take that cow to graze outside a school. And he would stand outside that school and listen to the teacher teaching. One day, apparently, the inspector of schools came there and asked the students a whole lot of questions, the answer to which none of the students had. But this boy standing outside said, I have the answer to all these questions. And he rattled off the answers. So his life started that way and he became internationally famous. He did his MSc in mathematics and then turned to law and became an outstanding judge. So this is the power that we have within ourselves, and this is called free will. Now, every human being has two forces acting on us. One is the resultant of past actions, which is called prarabdha or destiny, which cannot change at this moment. It's irrevocable. But in the present, we have what is known as purushartha or free will, which is independent, completely under your control, and you can use this as a tool to build a fantastic future for yourself. But because we don't know this, we do different things. Like, for instance, when you plant an apple seed, what you will get is only apple fruit. You cannot get mangoes. However much you beseech, you pray, you manipulate, you do what you want. You cannot get a mango fruit from an apple seed. The only way you'll get the mango fruit is by planting the mango seed. This we understand when it comes to apples and mangoes, and you might wonder why I'm talking about it. But when it comes to our life, the same logic doesn't seem to apply, or we don't apply. We want happiness, we are planting seeds of sorrow and misery. We want success, we are planting the seeds of failure. And this is what the problem is. So what we need to understand is that every action, every moment, we are free to choose. But once you make that choice and you act, you become a victim of its effect. So you are the creator of your destiny. There is no such thing as preordained fate. And it's not fixed. It keeps changing. Moment to moment, you're changing it, like a bank account. Every time there is a transaction in your account, your balance changes. Similarly, your karma balance changes every time you act. Now, the question that may arise in your mind is, no, if I am the creator of my future, then why is it that negative things happen? Because no one in the world will want to be handicapped, will want to suffer, will want unhappiness. Then how does it work? So destiny, or the result of all your past actions, is the resultant, like the law of parallelogram law of forces. If there is an object O and there are two forces acting on it, one horizontally, equal forces, horizontally and the other vertically, in which direction will this object move? At an angle of 45 degrees, and in that direction there is no force acting, but it is the resultant of the two forces. Similarly, if there are 100 forces acting on that object, the object will move in the direction of the resultant of all these forces, whether there is a force in that direction or not. Similarly, with our thoughts, our emotions, actions. What you face today is the resultant of all of them put together. In that direction, you may not have a desire or thought, but that's where it takes you. If you don't want what you're facing, you can't go to an astrologer, a palmist, or any external force. All you have to do is look within, take a look at your thoughts. What kind of thoughts are you entertaining? At your emotions, are you hateful or affectionate? Are you compassionate or spiteful? And your actions, are you selfish, malicious, or benevolent and unselfish? And the result, or what you face in future, will be a product of what you are acting now, or what your destiny is till now, plus or minus your present actions. So this is the power of positive actions, positive thinking. You've seen this loop: vasana, thought, desire, action. But at action level, at thought level, you bring in this free will, which dramatically changes your future. So there are two results of your thoughts, present thought, emotion, and action. One is the immediate effect. The moment you think a positive thought, a benevolent thought, a generous thought, that moment you feel enriched, you feel good. Take a look at two kids in kindergarten. One comes to school and her father has got her a gift from London, say. So she comes there and shows it to everyone, shares it with everyone. And in giving to another friend, take a look at the face of the child. She's beaming with happiness. Another child also brings something, but refuses to share. And when anyone asks for it, he says, "No, it's mine." Take a look at the face of the child. He's invariably got a frown when he says no. And so is it with us. The only difference is we are experts at faking. So we go around with a smile on our face when inside we say, "Oh, go to hell." But that's what it is. That's the immediate effect. And the second is the future effect, where it leaves an imprint on your personality and your character. And so the message of this law of karma is, be very careful what kind of thoughts you entertain, what emotions you feel, and what actions you perform. The potency of action varies depending on the kind of action you perform. If you are completely unaware, like you're walking along, you might trample on an insect and kill it, you don't become a murderer, you have no intention to kill. But where you perhaps have no intention to do harm to the other person, but you have been careless, like an underage teenager driving without a license, without proper control over the car, and goes and kills a person, there will be repercussions. It doesn't amount to murder, even in a court of law, but he has to pay for it, because when you get into a car and drive, you have to make sure that you have the wherewithal to drive properly and not cause harm to others. Then there is negative action, where you willfully, with full awareness, find pleasure in causing harm to another individual. You hate a person and you do things to bring him down. That has terrible repercussions. The repercussions where you have to face is not just with a banker's interest, not just the interest and penalty you pay on defaulting on credit card payments, but what we call as divine interest and penalty, which is back-breaking. So watch out for negative thoughts. Then positive actions. You are aware, like your president just announced, there is so much suffering in our country today, even in Mumbai. And we also have been distributing food supplies, enough provisions for a family of 4 for a month, to so as many people as we can afford to give to. And when you have this desire to do good to society, and you understand that you are privileged and under the present circumstances, it becomes your duty to reach out to people and help them. That's a positive action that has fantastic results, both in the present and in the future. So the power of generosity is something that we need to apply, experience for ourselves. We don't do that. Every privileged person, every wealthy person just shuts his windows, his personality, because he's afraid that somebody will come and ask me for money. I just said in a session I had earlier this morning that that's a terrible thing to feel, and you have to let go of that. Instead, if you cultivate the desire to help, when you want to help, nobody comes to you for help. Nobody takes advantage of you. But when you don't want to, people take great pleasure in extracting from you. This is the law. Then, like Buddha said, your mind is filled with loving kindness towards all beings. There's a documentary movie I saw the other day about an octopus. A man, a South African, befriends an octopus. And it's amazing how he goes down to the bottom of the ocean and he just reaches out to the octopus with his hand. And the octopus returns the courtesy and engulfs his hand with affection. It's incredible how animals seem to have this response to love. And if you apply this in your homes with your family members, in your workplaces with employees, with your customers, and have that deep intention to benefit the customer, it has a fantastic effect on you. I was just talking to someone again yesterday, and we were discussing J.R.D. Tata's attitude towards Air India. It was not just a business for him, it was his passion. He was committed to it. He loved it. And I've heard stories from crew members at that time of J.R.D. Tata. The moment the flight takes off, he's in first class, of course. He walks through to economy, occupies a vacant seat there, and watches very carefully how they treat the customers. Economy passengers. First class passengers, of course, everyone will take care of. And writes down meticulous notes of where they are lacking and talks to them later about it. And this is why I have traveled Air India in the 60s, 65 to 68. And it was a fantastic airline. It's such a pity what happened later. But this is it. This is an inspiration to all of us. even in our businesses, even in our workplaces, we can bring this attitude of love, affection, compassion, passion to our workplace, and then you see miracles happen. And the last, most potent thought is the understanding of the impermanence of the world. And then your attitude towards the world changes, you become less affected by what's happening around, and you gain power, you become independent. So this is as far as our life is concerned. Then the question arises of birth and death. Now, to understand, so an offshoot of the law of karma is the theory of reincarnation. And the Vedantic masters accepted that it's a theory, it cannot be proven. But just as in a court of law, there can be a conviction based on circumstantial evidence, they collected enough circumstantial evidence to point towards reincarnation. Today, you see psychiatrists in Canada, in the USA, in Europe, using what they call as past life regression to cure psychiatric patients of various illnesses. And they subscribe to this theory of reincarnation fully. But coming back to the law of karma, to understand what happens between birth and death, let's see what happens during our lifetime. During our lifetime, we move from one circumstance to another, one place to another. This movement is determined by what we call as predominant desire. We have all met here today, virtually, yes, not in person. But even this, why have we met here during this period? Because we have been driven by a desire. Maybe to chat with your friends, maybe because you want to know something about the law of karma, maybe to just register your attendance, whatever it be. There is some desire that has brought us all together here. Where will we go next? It depends on the next predominant desire. And thus it goes on from birth to death. Now, at death, you suddenly find a whole lot of desires, thoughts, leanings, ambitions, aspirations suddenly disappear into nothing. Then you take a look at birth. It's incredible when you see an infant being born. You wonder where it came from. Suddenly, a whole lot of aspirations, thoughts, desires seem to appear out of nowhere. Now, scientifically, it is illogical to believe that something came out of nothing and that something goes into nothing. So all that they did was they connected the unexplained effects at death with the unexplained causes at birth, and then it seemed to fit. So they define death as the movement of your inner personality from one body to another. Now, the next question that arises is, why does this movement take place? It's incredible. There has been an instance in Kentucky where a family was traveling in a private airplane to Kentucky. The plane crashed, and the only survivor was this little girl who, in the cold and the snow, walked several miles to the closest home and knocked at the door. She was the only survivor. Now, the question that arises is, and especially nowadays when we are faced with the COVID crisis, the question arises, why does one person die and another person survive? So, to explain all of this, what they said is that I'm putting it very in a simple manner because of the shortage of time. But if you want to know more details, I've written a book called Good Karma, which you may consider looking into, which explains this whole thing, the law of karma. But anyway, so the theory is that you have a whole lot of desires, let's say 1,000,000 desires. Out of these 1,000,000 desires, a handful, 200, are pressing for fulfillment. They are powerful and they want fulfillment. So these 200 determine your present birth. And the one thing you're guaranteed during your lifetime is that these 200 will be fulfilled. Death cannot take place until these 200 are fulfilled. But once the 200 are fulfilled, what happens is the next bundle of desires, let's say 150, are now pressing for fulfillment. But the nature and quality of these 150 is very different from the 200. So there's a mismatch between the second bundle of 150 and your body and your circumstances. These 150 cannot be fulfilled as you are. So nature gives us an opportunity to start afresh. This is called the death of this present body. And you move to another body which is more conducive to another set of circumstances and environment, more conducive for the fulfillment of the next bundle of desires, 150. Now, during life, we have access to the 1,000,000 as human beings. No other creature has that. So you can add to the 1,000,000, you can take away from it, you can change the quality, upgrade them, and you can also eliminate them. And this is the power that we have of free will that we need to deploy for our own growth, our own improvement, our own transformation into a towering personality. Every one of us has this potential. Whatever we may be, wherever we may be, it does not matter. But what matters is your commitment to your own development, commitment to your own growth, and then it's a matter of time. You transform completely from an ordinary person to an extraordinary immortal. Many people in history have achieved that. Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda's guru, was an ordinary person, illiterate by choice. But he rose to the highest level of development, perfection, at the tender age of 29. There have been several people who have not just grown spiritually in every sense of the term. An ordinary Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi became an extraordinary Mahatma. So the question now is, how do you do that? You just have to deploy 3 methods. One, while acting, shift your attitude from taking, grabbing, aggrandizing to giving, adding value to others, serving. And that brings a magical difference, makes a magical difference in your life. As long as you are driven by this attitude of taking, you remain stunted. Your growth is stunted. You remain dwarfish because the fact is you cannot achieve greatness with small thinking. So you have to expand your thinking. Emotionally, you have to move from viewing people as different from you, separateness, which breeds competition, animosity, hatred, and violence, to unison. You know, the entire battle of the Mahabharata war took place because one man, Dhritarashtra, saw differences between his own children and his brother's children. In those days, they were considered one family. They were considered brothers, not cousins. One man brought about so much devastation. In modern times, there was one Hitler who caused the death of millions of people because of his hatred. During the same time, there was one Mahatma Gandhi who, without fighting a war, won victory over the British. And that is the power of oneness, which we need to again cultivate. And the third thing is to understand. So, to highlight this, there's a lovely poem called The Nightingale and the Glowworm. So, the nightingale had sung all night and was looking for food, spotted the glowworm, and was about to pounce on the glowworm and consume it, when the glowworm saw the nightingale and quickly went out of reach. But he addressed the nightingale and said, "If only you could admire my light, my lamp, as much as I your minstrelsy, as much as I admire your singing, you would abhor to do me wrong, as much as I to spoil your song. For 'twas the self-same power divine taught you to sing and me to shine, that you with music and I with light might beautify and cheer the night. The ability to rise above differences and see oneness is a fantastic quality that helps us grow. Never mind what happens to the other person." And the last thought that I'd like to leave you with is that everything in the world passes. It's temporary, is impermanent. And while we are going through this present crisis, if we retain that thought that yes, it will pass, but during the time that it's there, let me do my best to combat it, to overcome it, and to help others who are suffering, you will achieve the permanent. So you then shift, your foundation shifts to the permanent, and you watch the passing of the impermanent as life goes by. So there is much more where this came from. And we have webinars every Saturday evening to discuss this subject between 6:30 and 7:30. If any of you are interested, you're most welcome to join us. It's free and open to everybody. And of course, I'm here in Mumbai. I would be happy to be with you anytime you want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jayaji. That was very inspirational. It was. Would you take some questions from our members?
Yes, sure. I've left time for questions.
Thank you. Mudit, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Rao, for that enlightening talk. My question is, you said the theory of karma cannot be proved. So then it means that the immediacy matters more than the future. So how would you be able to prove it to make people do good karma? Because that generally doesn't seem to be happening. Thank you.
No, I did not say that the theory of karma, it is the law of karma, which even science endorses, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You can't escape that. That is a law. What I said was the theory of reincarnation, for the simple reason. So we're talking about rebirth, right? That cannot be proven because memory is obliterated after death and you're born with a clean slate. So it can't be proven, but it can be concluded. And I gave the example of circumstantial evidence even in a court of law. Is that okay?
Yes, I got it. So I can believe in reincarnation, but if you say your actions will determine your future, naturally there's a cause and effect. But you say good causes have good effects and bad causes have bad effects. That is where I'm not able to get you.
It doesn't happen only in the next life. So you don't have to believe in the theory of reincarnation to understand and abide by the law of karma. More than 90% of what's happening you face in this lifetime. So, and you can see it, you can connect the cause and effect. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes. Ashok Pinawala, you have a question?
Yes, I do. How much of our karma actually gets affected, affects our destiny?
All of it. Every thought, every emotion, every action affects the destiny. It depends on the power of the thought, emotion, or action, and how much of the past has an impact. So it's a resultant. So if you want to change your destiny quickly, you have to put in consistent effort in a positive direction, and it has to be with all your might, all your heart and soul, and that has more power than mechanical action.
Thank you.
Thank you.
SV, your question?
First of all, Jayaji, excellent talk, lot of food for thought. I recall listening to your speech many years back, and you may or may not remember, we had a wonderful flight back and you gave a lot of food for thought then as well as you have done today. I'm just going to play, pardon my expression, a bit of a devil's advocate in the context of karma. What Gita says is karmanyeva adhikariste ma phaleshu kadachana. So Lord Krishna tells Arjun in the battlefield, look, your job, your duty is to do karma. Your duty is not to expect the fruits of karma. The fruits are not because of what you have done. So whatever you have said seemed to go slightly different. Almost you are giving us saying that you do good karma, you will do get good things. So there seems to be a slight, in my mind, conceptually, a bit of a disconnect to what you mentioned, and not that I disagree with you, and what Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. My second question is, when these desires no longer remain, is that when reincarnation stops?
Yes.
These are my two questions.
Yeah. Your first question, see, in this presentation, I only explained the law of karma. Okay. But while acting, when you understand that your present action is going to make a difference to your future, then what Krishna says is correct, that focus 100% on the present action. While performing the present action, don't think of the future, because the future is unborn. The future is something you don't have control over. You have control only over the present, but the present impacts on your future. So at the moment, don't think of the future. But while planning and strategizing on your life's activities, you have to take the law of karma into consideration and say, okay, if this is what I want, this is how I should act.
And my second question about...
Yes, sorry. When all your desires are eliminated, then you reach the state of enlightenment that Buddha spoke of, that Ramakrishna spoke of, that all these enlightened masters reached. So you then go beyond the purview of the law of karma.
Reincarnation stops.
No, yes, reincarnation stops because it is desire that drives reincarnation. So when you run out of fuel, reincarnation stops.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Farhad, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Jaya Rowji. Very interesting. Excellent talk. My question to you is that, we are going through this severe pandemic globally. What is your assessment? Has the world really learned anything from this pandemic? Because we are still continuing to remain territorial. We're still, I don't know how much of a relationship that we are defining. And there are so many issues that this, opportunities that this pandemic has given to reflect on our lives. What is your thought on this?
See, it's very difficult to think what's happening collectively, because it depends on how individually every human being responds to a challenge like this. As the saying goes, a wise man learns from others' mistakes, a fool by his own. But there are certain super fools who don't learn even from their own mistakes. So there is a combination of different kinds of people. There are some people who have learned a lot and have changed the course of their life. And there are, at the other end of the spectrum, people who are trying to cheat the lockdown, who go out and behave irresponsibly and create problems not just for themselves, but for others also. So it's a question of learning the lessons in time, behaving responsibly. And I think those of us who have this awareness must do our bit to spread it, to tell others, because in our country we have illiteracy. Is not just illiteracy but ignorance and wrong beliefs. So those of us who have had the good fortune of exposure to knowledge and education, we have this added responsibility of making others more responsible, and giving examples, like for instance Japan, or Singapore, these are countries that were affected by COVID, but because every citizen behaved responsibly, they were able to overcome it. And we have been hit by our own foolishness. And you can't blame only the government. No government in the world can do it. It's every citizen that has to do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Preeti, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Jayaji. It was a real delightful talk. I am part of other study groups as also Chinmaya Mission and trying to understand Bhagavad Gita. Also, as we speak, I have registered for your Saturday classes and looking forward to it. One question which I have is that in our daily life, moving away from what we have been talking thus far, in our daily life, we come across various situations which somehow, because of our human nature, and we have still not been able to perfect that, to overcome those emotions of anger. Now, this is a subject which keeps coming up in various discussions that I've been having. And I just wanted to understand your perspective, particularly in a situation where you may be on the right course, but somebody else is not, and that results in, because of your corporate relationship or professional work, that you result in reacting rather than responding. What is your perspective on that?
You spoke of anger. Anger is nothing but desire obstructed. So the desire may be positive, like you mentioned. You may want to do good, but even that desire, it's still a desire. So when it is obstructed, someone comes in the way and you're not able to do what you want to do, the thought current that's going from you to that particular object gets deflected as anger towards the person who's obstructing it. So you have to look at the source of your anger. And if you tend to be a generally angry person, it's because you have too many desires that are frustrated. So you've got to tackle those desires first. Now, how do you tackle desires? First, bring your intellect into play. Let the intellect scan your desires and figure out whether, number one, you need to fulfill those desires, whether it is in your interests or not. And if so, how do you go about fulfilling them? So then when you manage your desires, your agitation levels or anger comes down considerably. Then comes reduction of desires. And this happens by picking up a higher desire. And this you've been doing right through your life. As a child, all of us had millions of desires for toys. You couldn't pass a toy shop without hankering for something or the other. But the moment you grow into a teenager, and learn the joys and the thrills of teenage life, the desire for toys just drops. The toys lose their luster. And this is how we keep moving to adulthood. As adults, what they tell us is we are spiritual children, because even now as adults, we are hankering after little things in life, mostly physical. Move to the emotional and you become free from the physical. Like if I were to offer you the best chocolate in the world and you say you love chocolates, but you don't eat it, you put it away in your bag. And I say, I thought you liked chocolates. You say, yes, I love them, but I'm taking it home for my child. And when your child eats the chocolate without offering you a bite, you don't feel deprived, you don't feel frustrated. You glow with satisfaction because your emotional desire has been satisfied watching the child eat. Then you move to the intellectual. I've seen students go from luxurious backgrounds here to a US university where they have to do everything on their own and it's a different lifestyle. But they go through all that away from their families because of the desire to get a PhD or a master's degree from one of the best universities. And then comes the spiritual. So now when we say rise above desire, reduce your desires, it doesn't mean don't have object of desire. In fact, desire is the greatest obstruction to obtaining the object of desire. A person who's hankering after a promotion never gets it. A person who just does his job and is cool towards the promotion is the one who gets it. So this is how it is. And with this, you tackle all your anger and negativity and viciousness automatically goes away.
Thank you for this nice explanation.
My pleasure.
We have a member who's asking, there are people who are sometimes born just inherently with a bad nature. How do they earn good karma?
That's interesting because in this law of karma, what it says is it doesn't matter how low your level is or how bad you are. What matters is, have you decided or are you moving in the right direction? So it's like, it doesn't matter what your starting point is. You could be like this Jewish real estate baron who went as a refugee to the United States after the Second World War, but became a billionaire. So it's not the starting point that matters. It is what you do in the present, every moment, consistently that matters. So it doesn't matter how bad or good your nature is. Move in the right direction, you'll get there.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? No, I don't think we do. Thank you so very much, Jayaji. Thank you.
My pleasure.
May I ask Satyan to please propose the official vote of thanks?
With pleasure, Fali. Jayaji, your thoughts were truly inspirational and enlightening. In fact, your advice of serving oneness and impermanence is like gold dust. I'm sure all of us will grow with that advice. In fact, it was our desire to listen to you. Fate chose today's date, and it was karma that we got to actually listen to you and learn from you. We are grateful to Rotarian Vikram Daya for making it possible for us to listen to you today. Jayaji, as a token of our appreciation for the afternoon that you spent with the members of our club, we will on your behalf light up a rural household using solar power, and we will also send you the certificate shortly.